Day one of the MLB draft is in the books, and as completely expected, the takes are all over the place. Time to make sense of what the Pirates did, or at least try to, and that's next on Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome to Locked On Pirates. I'm Gary Morgan. The Pirates made 4 choices yesterday, but honestly, for our purposes today, we really only need to discuss Seth Hernandez, the 1-6 selection. We'll go ahead and discuss the first 4 selections anyway, just because. Let's have this first segment be kind of about the picks, and then we'll make the rest of it about the draft and draft theory and why you would do this and why not take a college player and all the things that you guys are out there assortedly whining about. Let's go ahead and start from there. So the round 1 pick 6 right-handed pitcher Seth Hernandez out of a California high school, prep school specifically. This is a grade A pick. Hernandez is the reigning National Gatorade Player of the Year. He's widely regarded as one of the best high school pitching prospects in recent memory. He boasts at least 3+ pitches and a polished delivery for his age. With elite athleticism and a high ceiling, he projects as a potential top-of-the-rotation starter. The pick carries some risk, as with any prep pitcher, but the upside is an immense number 1. Round 2, pick 50, Angel Cervantes out of California high school, another prep school. He's a B+ pick here, another high school righty from California. Cervantes features a strong pitch mix highlighted by a standout changeup. Though younger and more raw than Hernandez, his projectability and potential for added velocity make him an intriguing developmental arm. He's seen as a long-term investment with considerable upside. In the comp round B specifically, they had the 73rd pick, and they went with third baseman Murph Gray out of Fresno State. This is seen by many as a B- pick. And I don't want to get into too much of our discussion we're going to have later, but a reason that you would pick a guy such as Murph Gray here is because their first 2 selections are considered overslot, meaning they were picked lower probably than they were expected to, and it's going to cost a little bit more bonus pool money to actually have them sign. They're both expected to sign, but you're going to take a little bit of a lesser value in the comp round just to make sure that you can actually feed the beast here. But Gray brings serious power potential. He had 18 home runs with a 639 slug in his junior year. He's 6'4", 230 pounds, physical presence. A lot of questions remain about his speed and his defensive fit overall. Basically what that means when people don't know about your defensive fit and you're at this point where you're getting drafted, all that really means is we don't think you're going to be a center fielder, and you're probably not going to be a shortstop either. If you're not going to fit into either of those 2 positions, there tends to be defensive questioning. And all that means is you could wind up being a left fielder like so many great players have, or a third baseman, or a first baseman, something along those lines. That's all it means, at least for the purposes of kind of whitewashing it. And then in round 3, pick 82, catcher Easton Carmichael out of Oklahoma, another college bat. Steady, well-rounded catcher Carmichael impressed in the SEC and the Cape Cod League. We know very well that Charrington really likes the Cape Cod League, loves those wood bat leagues. While he may not have standout tools, his athleticism, defensive skills, and consistent performance give him a high floor. He's a safer pick compared to the earlier high risk arms, meaning his floor is higher than his ceiling. Okay. This is considered a B plus pick by very many people. So those are the 4 picks that they made. Okay. I think, first of all, we set ourselves up for failure when we pretend that we knew all of these 4 players and we had all 4 of these players really well scouted out. I I can't say that. And I don't think that many of you can say that. All we can do is read what experts have to say, listen to what experts have to say. And I've done that on all 4 of these. Local expert Murph works over at Substack that he has, Bucks on Deck, talks a lot about the draft and prospects in general. Probably the smartest prospect guy I know outside of Corey, who was just here for yesterday's show. But he loved the first 2 selections, especially those 2 pitchers were arguably his 2 favorite pitchers in this draft pool. So Seth Hernandez and Angel Cervantes are both made him very happy. And I got to be honest, if you make Murph happy, a lot of the time it tends to make the fans happy because he's usually right about this stuff. For instance, he was crowing about Edward Florentino long before anyone I know saw him do anything on the baseball field. And here he is in Bradenton showing up, you know. Typically when Murph says he likes something, it's good enough for me. As far as like why would they go with a high school arm versus the college bat that was there, Arquette fell to the Pirates. And a lot of people thought that Arquette was a perfect fit for the Pirates for a lot of reasons. Now, I will say a lot of you probably had the delusion that if you took Ava Arquette, he's going to be here next year in the lineup helping out. He's not. I mean, that was probably never really on the table for him. I think best case scenario with Ava Arquette, you probably see him start in, I would imagine they would probably start him in Greensboro. I would think that would be appropriate for a high school bat with his pedigree. But I think you'd be looking at a good half season in Greensboro and then maybe up to Altoona in 2026. Sometime in 2027, you're looking at AAA, maybe the majors, if everything goes super great. Seth Hernandez is going to take a little bit longer than that. That said, maybe not as long as many high school pitchers. Not all high school pitchers are created equal. Some high school pitchers, like for instance, if you went to my alma mater and just plucked the guy off the high school team, pretty good chance you've got an awful lot of work to do. But these prep schools, the prep schools are arguably equivalent to a year or 2 in college, is what a lot of people like to say. Or even a year in rookie ball, I've heard some people put it. I think that's probably overselling it a little bit, but I've still heard it put that way. I still think Hernandez is pretty developed, though, much more developed than you think, at least when you hear high school pitcher. But he does have 3 pitches that are probably major league ready right now. He's got work to do as far as like just kind of buttoning up his repertoire, cleaning up some of his mechanics, working on some holding guys on base type stuff, stretching himself out, the typical stuff that most people have to go through. I think Seth Hernandez is a guy that'll start in Bradenton, and I would be shocked if he doesn't like at least move up a level every half year or so. He should move very quickly. For those of you freaking out for real, I would say he's got probably at least double the preparedness to develop as a pitcher than Bubba Chandler had when he was picked up. And look at where Bubba is. He's got a heck of a lot more track laid than Hunter Barco, who spent so much time injured and recovering from his Tommy John surgeries and look where he's at. This is very much in that mold talent-wise. This is the type of player that should and could fly through this system. I guess I say that because if your main bitch is that he's not immediate help, well, yeah, he's not immediate help, but he's also probably just about as far away as somebody like Ava Arquette. Now, he isn't a hitter, at least the Pirates probably won't let him be, but Ava Arquette comes with another side of an argument. That's one we'll talk about when we come back, because I don't want to really belabor the point too much, but there's a reason that Ava Arquette is not seen as the same level of prospect as Seth Hernandez, even if I think it's entirely likely you see him succeed in the majors first. We've all been there. Togging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you could save up to 60% off with their killer last minute deals. If you're tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal, Gametime Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Hey, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hit me with a like. Yeah, did it shock me a little bit that Seth Hernandez was the pick? Yes. Here's why it shocked me, though. I never thought he'd fall to 6. I really didn't. I thought Seth Hernandez falling to 6 was just something that I didn't expect to see. I didn't think he'd get past the Cardinals if he did fall that far. And pleasantly surprised that he did. Again, I think this is a great pick for this team. A lot of time, I think fans get caught up in the hype of looking at their team right now when you head into a draft, and it's just not like the NFL or the NBA or even hockey to a degree. Hockey's a little bit closer than the other sports, but very rarely are you looking for immediate answers to your major league team. There's a couple reasons for that. One, by the time whoever you draft shows up at your doorstep ready to contribute, or at least ready to try to contribute on the major league roster, because remember, this isn't a situation where most draft picks progress through the system, get to the majors, and then just continue to fly. Yeah, you've seen Jacob Wilson. Yeah, you've seen Nick Kurtz. Yeah, you've seen some other guys too. A lot more often what you see are guys that are highly touted, such as like, oh, I don't know, the other Holiday, the Jackson that was drafted the other year. Well, he's not exactly what you kind of hoped he would be yet, because he hasn't come close to reaching his ceiling. Ethan Holiday will have the same problem. The ceiling's up there, but it could take 4 or 5 years for him to really reach that ceiling. So will he reach the major leagues quickly? I mean, I don't know what the Rockies will do, but I would imagine just because of where he is and the raw potential of the draft pick that Ethan Holiday is, you're probably looking at like a 3-year, 3.5-year journey, I would imagine, unless he just really goes ham in the minors. But I think the Rockies will take their time, and then when he gets there, he gets there. But they're not drafting him based on where their team is now. They're drafting him because they think he's the best talent available. And at the end of the day, that's all you're trying to do in the draft. Somebody smart once told me, and I think it was Clint Hurdle, you're not drafting for the team that you're currently watching in the bigs, you're drafting for the franchise. So you're drafting things that you want to add into your system. You're drafting for things that you need in your system. You need talent in your system more than anything else. And when you're picking that high, you kind of can't afford to reach a lot. Now, we already discussed Ava was there, Ava Arquette. I think that would have been a perfectly fine pick. Had they made that pick, I wouldn't be upset about it. I wouldn't be on this show having a different show, belly aching about how they probably should have taken Seth, Hernandez. I think I would have mentioned that Seth Hernandez would have been a good talent to go after. I had him as one of my top 3 talents available, period. So when he fell, to me, that's a no-brainer. You take Seth Hernandez. Ava, I think there's a few questions as to whether he sticks it short. Not enough that I think you would avoid picking him for that. There's a few questions about his overall ceiling, meaning, is he kind of already close to there? You get what I mean? Like, he's a good player right now, and he's somebody that I think his floor sets up perfectly for you to believe in your heart of hearts he's going to make it and he's going to be a major league player. I think you're looking at a 2 to 3 year journey for him to get to the major leagues. And then I think you're looking at a ceiling that honestly kind of underwhelms a little bit. This is a guy that tops out at, in my opinion, like a David Freese or, if you want a modern comp to somebody that's on the Pirates right now, Nick Gonzalez, maybe with a little bit more apparent baked in power. But I still think it takes a couple years. This certainly doesn't affect next year's lineup. And that's another thing about these draft choices. A lot of the things I kept seeing about taking Seth Hernandez, well, they're definitely trading Keller now. I saw it 5 or 6 times from people. This has nothing to do with Mitch Keller. This guy's not replacing Mitch Keller. They don't expect this guy to replace Mitch Keller. In fact, by the time this guy makes it to the major leagues, there's a very good chance that Mitch Keller is already got a year or 2 left on his deal, and you're already considering moving on. So I guess if you really want to pretend that he's replacing Mitch Keller, I guess he might be replacing him towards the end of his contract. But this is no red herring that there's a trade coming. There's no anything like that to this. I can honestly tell you, there's no looking at the current day roster when they're making these draft selections. And that goes from day 1 to day 3. They won't think once about what's on this team. Not once. Last year, or the year before, when they chose Paul Skeens over Dylan Cruz, I could have argued with you right then that they needed hitting more than they needed pitching. But I think you can agree that Paul Skeens was a better selection, right? They both got here in about the same time. And hindsight certainly guides you that Paul Skeens was the right choice, because Dylan Cruz is hitting 8th or 9th for the Washington Nationals most of the time. He's come up here and he's played defense the way you expected him to, but the bat hasn't come up and set the world on fire. Certainly hasn't done what Paul Skeens has done. But that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong long term. 10 years from now, you come back and look at that draft and you see Cruz versus Skeens, and who knows, we might be talking about 2 really, really solid, good all-world players, and it's going to seem like that gap was a little bit smaller. But again, you're drafting who you think is the best talent. You're drafting who you think, in the Pirates' case, who has the most room for their ceiling, and can we get him there? That's why they picked Seth Hernandez. That's all it is. Out of everybody that was on the board at that time, he by far has the highest ceiling. And that's universally accepted among scouts. Doesn't mean you have to like it, but it does mean that I don't think what you really wanted was actually there. You want immediate help for the offense, and there is no immediate help for the offense in this draft. There isn't. There just isn't. You can't make it be there. Just like you couldn't make there actually be a star quarterback in the first round of last year's NFL draft. Just like you couldn't make there be a star quarterback in the draft the year when the Steelers selected Kenny Pickett. And there you do expect instant impact. In baseball, again, not so much. There is nobody that got picked yesterday outside of maybe the Angels selection at number 2 overall that is going to get to this league quickly. And the only reason he might is because they straight up selected somebody who's very likely going to be a reliever. And he's a capable reliever who can probably step right into a bullpen. Can totally see that happening. I could see Doyle maybe coming up into a bullpen right away. But if they want him to start, that's not going to happen either. The impact immediate bat, it's just not there. It's just not. There's just as much chance that this team finds a way to get Murph Gray, who they picked with the Comp B pick, to the league as quickly as Ava Arquette makes it. I mean it. It really depends on the system you get into and what they do with you. You know, I'm just saying it's not really about what you think it's about. It's certainly not a lack of urgency. I've even seen some people calling it tone deaf selecting Seth Hernandez. Tone deaf? Are we paying attention to tone now when we draft players? No. They didn't care about this current team's construction when they were drafting, and they certainly don't care about your feelings when they're drafting, nor should they. In fact, if they did, if I felt like they were making picks based on what fans wanted to see them pick, I would have even more problem with this GM than I already do. Lastly, most of these selections, most of this draft board, most of the ratings that the team put on things, most of their lineup of people that they wanted to see drafted came from Horowitz, who they hired a couple years ago to be the head of scouting. This stuff is just not what you want it to be. A lot of you want to hate everything Ben Cherington does and have it all be a mistake. And I totally get it. But that doesn't make everything he does a mistake. Okay? This was a good pick. Sorry. I know some of you are going to hate it no matter what, but it was a good pick. Easily the most talented player on the board left available. Now, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Ben Cherington bringing up 2026. It's the first time I've heard him do it. And I hope it doesn't mean that he thinks he really has a chance at being here, but maybe he does. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. I just want to talk real quick about something that Ben Cherington said on his radio show on Sunday morning. Said our focus is short term. By short term, I don't necessarily mean August of 2025, but our focus is going to be how do we get this thing on track and be better in 2026, win more games in 2026. That's our focus in all of our decision making. That doesn't mean we wouldn't trade a player for a prospect. That just means that if I do that, it is in our mind a way to add value to the organization that we can somehow use to build back toward a better team in 2026. So, a couple things there. First, it's the first time that I've heard Ben Cherington actually reference 2026, meaning either he thinks that he's going to be here in 2026 or that he has any kind of vision that goes beyond 2025. And we know that to be true already. I just find it a little significant that he's chosen now to mention it as he's about to embark on the draft, which ultimately he did. But it gives you a little bit of a look into the mindset, especially like going into a draft. They certainly aren't going to be looking at a draft to help that current situation. I think that's just a misconception that you all just got to get past, quite frankly. But he did mention in there that he wouldn't be opposed to selling off some guys for prospects. And I think that too is something that shouldn't shock you, but it's something that I think a lot of you probably bristled at hearing him say. This to me is just such common fact that it's going to happen. You're just going to get prospects for a lot of the guys that are going to get moved out. IKF and Bednar and Andrew Heaney, Caleb Ferguson, and all those types of players. They're all going to bring back prospects. They're not going to bring back major league help. And I've been telling you this for a while, but that's all he's doing is laying track for the inevitable because he's going to trade those types of players. In fact, I've been told that's all he's really going to be allowed to trade. So I wouldn't expect like any of your needle movers that bring like big bats back that you automatically expect to jump into this lineup at this deadline. I just don't see it. Mitch Keller would be your only guy you could really trade to get anything like that. And again, I've tried to explain it to you why it's such a thin needle to thread, but I'd just say look around the league. Like, pick a playoff team that you think needs Mitch Keller. That should be easy. You should have no problem coming up with a team that thinks they need Mitch Keller. Next thing you have to do is think of a team that isn't going to mind paying him. He is going to make over $20 million a year, not next year, but the year after. And he's going to start costing a little bit more money. I think he performs more than well enough for that salary. I think it's a well-earned salary. I don't think it's a problem. But I do think you're still going to have a hard time finding more than a handful of teams that both need him and can't afford him. Now, the third piece of the puzzle you have to find is which one of those teams can also return you a major league property that can step right into your lineup. I bet that answer is a little bit bigger before I put the next caveat in. Oh yeah, they have to actually be an impact player in this order. You add all four of those caveats in there, and I'm sorry, I don't see you finding it at the deadline. I don't think the Pirates are going to find it at the deadline. I think this is an off-season move, if it happens at all, but I definitely don't see it now. I can tell you Brian Reynolds will not be traded this deadline. I don't even think it'll be considered, but he will not be traded. O'Neal Cruz will not be traded. Paul Skeens will not be traded. Most of anybody that you'd care about isn't going to be traded. David Bednar is probably the most sensitive one, and that's only because he's still got another year of control. I could even see Bob Nutting wanting to step in and try to extend him instead. But I think like you start taking away like the bits and pieces of what he could actually trade and what would bring back major league talent. I think you're going to find that at this deadline, there just isn't much. I think you're looking at the off season for additions like that. And Bob's got to step up and pay some money. He's going to have to step up and invest some money in this team. And if he doesn't, well, that's not going to be on Ben Cherington. That's going to be on any GM. It really is. It's going to be on any GM they bring in here because there's going to be a difficulty of bringing in major league bats. Okay, like the Tommy Pham that you see right now who's performing, that's the Tommy Pham that Ben Cherington saw as being out there. The problem with Ben Cherington is Ben Cherington ignores that capability belies what he can actually do on a day in and day out basis throughout the course of an entire season. He takes that capability that's in there that Tommy has shown he can do for 3 weeks, a month at a time in each of his last few seasons. And he takes it as, well, for us, he could do that for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months even. And he thinks that's a worthy swing, and it's not a worthy swing. You get what I mean? So to me, there has to be change made at the general manager level. I'm uncomfortable hearing him talk about 2026, if only because I really kind of just don't think now's a time for anybody here to be worrying about fixing anything for this year or trying to swing some major move and force something into existence to see if you can bring some stuff back. The best case scenario for a trade at the deadline for Mitch Keller is that you trade him for a block of good players that are only in the minors because their parent team can't find a place for them. And I would just invite you to look around at some of those parent teams and understand that they're blocked with intent. Okay? Like the Dodgers didn't make it difficult for Michael Busch to break through in LA because they hate Michael Busch or because they don't want a kid to ever do well. They made it hard for him to get on the field and stay on the field because they had too many other good players and they didn't have the patience or time to sit there and put it into him and hope that they turned him into what they felt was going to top out as an above average player. The Cubs thought differently, and they went out and got Michael Busch, and now Michael Busch is hitting home runs and holding down first base and doing rather well. If you'll remember, which you probably won't because I didn't do it on this show, but I've written, Michael Busch was a guy that I wanted the Pirates to target for this exact same reason. He's an unfinished product with a decent amount of ceiling left to offer, and he had already proven that he could handle the major league lifestyle. It's a perfect kind of guy. There just aren't a ton of them. I've identified a few, like with Boston, and a couple with the Orioles, and even a couple with the A's, and I think there's some guys out there that they could target. I think there's some deals that could be there. I'm just asking you to maybe get your hopes down a little bit for this deadline because I just don't think you're going to see anything all that exciting, mostly by design, but also because it's just not the right time to try to pull off some of the things that we fans are hoping they will. Most of the big trades, I think, have to come this offseason. Enjoy the home run derby tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll talk about that tomorrow. And we'll talk about a little bit of all-star game prep. I want to talk a little bit about Paul Skeens and what he's done. It's historically significant that he's starting another all-star game tomorrow night. So I want to discuss that too. Till then, that's all I got. Stay locked, everybody. Let's go, Bucks.